Hi there. So we're going to cover two letters today, 2nd John and 3rd John. They're both just one chapter. And I'll do the overviews between the two books. So it'll be easy to tell where they separate. Okay. Let's start with Chuck Swindoll's overview. The overview is actually longer than the book of 2nd John, but we'll read it. Okay, we'll jump over there. Okay, 2nd John. Who wrote the book? John did not identify himself by name in this letter, but he did adopt the term elder for himself in 2 John 1:1. There has been some debate about whether an author named John the Elder wrote this letter, as well as 3rd John, which is addressed the same way, or if John the Apostle was using a different title for himself. However, the earliest church tradition for the 2nd century testified in unison 2nd century on testified in unison that this letter and its companion, 3rd John, were written by the apostle, not by a mysterious unknown elder. In fact, an apostle using the term elder for himself was not unprecedented. Peter did that very thing in his first epistle. Oh, where are we? John offered little in the way of detail in the short letter we call 2nd John. Nothing in the circumstances John discussed in the letter would lead a reader of the time to think that it did not go to the same churches that received 1st John. The apostle addressed the letter to the chosen lady and her children, a mysterious phrase that has been much debated. That's in the first verse. It either refers to an actual woman or serves as a metaphor for a church. In either case, whether to a smaller family group joined by blood or to a larger one joined by confession, the application of the letter should remain unchanged, with the letter's thematic similarity to 1 John. It's best to suggest that John wrote from Patmos in about AD 90. Why is 2nd John so important? 2nd John makes clear what our position should be regarding the enemies of the truth. There you go. Whereas 1 John focuses on our fellowship with God, 2nd John focuses on protecting our fellowship from those who teach falsehood. That's really important for today. The apostle went so far as to warn his readers against inviting false teachers into the house or even offering them a greeting. Such practices align the believer with the evildoer, and John was keen on keeping the believers pure from the stain of falsehood and heresy. Now, what's the big idea? John began his second epistle proclaiming his love for the chosen lady and her children, a love he shared with those who know the truth. From the reports he had received, he understood that these believers were following the teachings of Christ. He summed up this kind of lifestyle in the exhortation to love one another, a clear reference to the great commandments of Jesus, to love God and love your neighbor. In other words, those who walk in the truth should be people who love others, but they should be cautious whom they love. Deceivers and false teachers had infiltrated the church, people who taught falsehoods about the person of Jesus, teaching that he was not truly a man, but only appeared to be one. That's why we read last time that if you want to test a false teacher, tell them to say Jesus was a man. If they can't say it, they're a false teacher. This early heresy called Docetism, I'm probably saying that wrong, required the strongest possible response from John, so the apostle warned the true believers away from false teachers. John's encouragement then was not simply to love, but to love others within the limits that truth allows. How do I apply this? John's strong encouragement to believers in 2nd John involved loving one another. However, John did not leave the undefined, but described it as walking according to his commandments. Okay? This echoes the teaching of Jesus in John's Gospel, where the Lord told his followers, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments." Our love is dependent on our obedience. When we don't obey, we don't love. Often we get the mindset that our obedience to God affects only ourselves. But that simply is not true. Our actions, whether obedient or disobedient, have ripple effects far beyond our own limited vision of a circumstance. Consider your own life. In what ways might your obedience or disobedience impact those in your immediate circle of relationships? 2 John reminds us not only of the dangers of falling away from the truth, but also of the importance of making obedience a priority in our lives, for ourselves and for those most important to us. There you go. Wow. So let's bring this over here. And this is 2 John. Like I said, it's very short. And we'll start reading what we've read. We get a good idea of what it's about, right? This letter is from John the Elder. I'm writing to the chosen lady and to her children, whom I love in the truth, as does everyone else who knows the truth, because the truth lives in us and will be with us forever. Grace, mercy, and peace, which come from God the Father and from Jesus Christ, the Son of the Father, will continue to be with us who live in truth and love. Live in the truth. How happy I was to meet some of your children and find them living according to the truth, just as the Father commanded. I'm writing to remind you, dear friends, that we should love one another. This is not a new commandment, but one we have had from the beginning. Love means doing what God has commanded us, and He has commanded us to love one another, just as you heard from the beginning. I say this because many deceivers have gone out into the world. They deny that Jesus Christ came in a real body. Such a person is a deceiver and an antichrist. Watch out that you do not lose what we have worked for so hard to achieve. Yeah, lots of those people out there. Be diligent so that you receive your full reward. Anyone who wanders away from this teaching has no relationship with God. But anyone who remains in the teaching of Christ has a relationship with both the Father and the Son. If anyone comes to your meeting and does not teach the truth about Christ, don't invite that person into your home or give any kind of encouragement. Anyone who encourages such people becomes a partner in their evil work. Wow. Now, there's lots of these people, especially the big pastors out today, that they talk about stuff that's just not the truth, They talk about material things. That you can have money, and you can have wealth, and you can have happiness, okay? The Bible doesn't talk about happiness. The Bible talks about joy. Joy comes from knowing where you're going and having faith. Okay? Happiness comes and goes. Okay? Well, let's read that again. 2 John 1:10. If anyone comes to your meeting and does not teach the truth about Christ, don't invite that person into your home or give any kind of encouragement. Anyone who encourages such people becomes a partner in their evil work. Wow. Conclusion. I have much more to say to you, but I don't want to do it with paper and ink, for I hope to visit you soon and talk with you face to face. Then our joy will be complete. Greetings from the children of your sister, chosen by God. Wow. So, that was 2 John. Very short. Talks about living in the truth. We can read the highlighted parts. 2 John 1:7. He's talking about love. God has commanded us, and He has commanded us to love one another, just as you have heard from the beginning. I say this because many deceivers have gone out into the world. They deny that Jesus Christ came in a real body. Such a person is a deceiver and an antichrist. Watch out that you do not lose what we have worked so hard to achieve. Yeah, by saying that He didn't come in a real body, that says that He couldn't have died for our sins, because He was only a spirit. He was a real body. He bled. He ate. He drank. He laughed. He cried. He hugged. No. In the mornings, if anyone comes to your meeting and does not teach the truth about Christ, don't invite that person into your home or give any kind of encouragement. Well, anyone who encourages such people becomes a partner in their evil work. Wow, that's tough. That is tough. So, it's 3 John, one chapter. Let's jump over back to Chuck Swindoll's overview, and we'll talk about 3 John. Again, it's longer than the actual book itself, but we'll go over it. Okay, 3 John. And this is at the 9-minute 34-second mark, so separates the books. Okay, who wrote the book? The Apostle John identified himself in 3 John only as the elder, the same as he did in 2 John. At the writing of this, his final epistle, John was nearing the end of his life, a life that had changed dramatically some 6 decades before, when Jesus had called John and his brother James out from their fishing boat. The boys had left their livelihood and their father Zebedee to follow Jesus. While James was the first of his 12 disciples to die for his faith, John outlived all the others. John referred to himself in his gospel as the disciple whom Jesus loved, a title that highlights one of the great themes of all of John's biblical contributions, including 3 John, the love of God working itself out in the lives of human beings. Where are we? While we cannot pinpoint the date with certainty due to the lack of specific information in the letter, 3 John was probably written around AD 90 from the island of Patmos, where John was exiled at the time. John wrote his letter to Gaius, a leader of one or more churches in Asia Minor. The apostle had received a report of some difficulties caused by a man named Diotrephes, and John wrote to reinforce for Gaius the proper way to deal with the troubles. Why is 3 John so important? While Gaius was dealing with certain troubles in his area, John wanted to direct him not only in how to respond to the trials, but also how to relate to those who proclaim the truth. John's 3 epistles are largely concerned with the issue of fellowship with God, with enemies of the gospel, and, in the case of 3 John, with those who proclaim the truth. John wanted to ensure a warm welcome from the churches to those who traveled around preaching the gospel, offering them hospitality and a send-off in a manner worthy of God. What's the big idea? Troubles had come to the church in Asia. Diotrephes had taken control of one of the churches there and used his power to ban certain traveling missionaries from coming to the church at all. At one point, the church had seen something of a leadership quality in him and placed him in charge. But now, in the top spot, the power had gone to his head. He refused to welcome those traveling ministers of the gospel to preach and take rest with his church. And even worse, upon receiving an earlier correction from John, Diotrephes refused to listen. Well, the troubling situation prompted John to write to Gaius, commending the believers for holding fast to the truth and doing so with a loving attitude. These Christians strove to make the gospel a reality in their lives through the way they treated one another, and John, in response to this good report about their behavior of these rank-and-file Christians, encouraged them to continue to love and support those visiting believers who gave them of themselves and ministered in the churches of Asia. How do I apply this? How do you show hospitality to other Christians, particularly to those who serve you and others in your local church and the churches around the world? Showing hospitality to others, particularly strangers, requires a level of trust and acceptance that is not necessarily required of us in our everyday lives. It forces us to rely on a common bond in Jesus Christ rather than a particular blood relationship or shared experience. It forces us out of our comfort zones and into a territory where we must place our trust in God. John used the words such as love and truth to describe this kind of living, and he used a negative example of Diotrephes to illustrate the dangers of going down a different path. We have a responsibility as Christians to live according to the truth we find in the life and ministry of Jesus, to care for and support those who serve God's people. Our Lord was surrounded by people who took care of him. 3 John teaches us that we should do the same for those who carry the teaching of Jesus in our own day. This is true. Very good. Okay, let's jump back to, and we'll do 3 John. Like I said, it's very short too. So, 3 John 1. Greetings, this letter is from John the Elder. I am writing to Gaius, my dear friend, whom I love in the truth. Dear friend, I hope all is well with you and that you are as healthy in body as you are strong in spirit. Some of the traveling teachers recently returned and made me very happy by telling me about your faithfulness and that you are living according to the truth. I could have no greater joy than to hear that my children are following the truth, caring for the Lord's workers. Dear friend, you are being faithful to God when you care for the traveling teachers who pass through, even though they are strangers to you. They have told the church here of your loving friendship. Please continue providing for such teachers in a manner that pleases God, for they are traveling for the Lord, and they accept nothing from the people who are not believers. So we ourselves should support them so that we can be their partners as they teach the truth. I wrote to the church about this, but Diotrephes, who loves to be the leader, refuses to have anything to do with this. When I come, I will report some of the things he is doing and the evil accusations he is making against us. Not only does he refuse to welcome the traveling teachers, he also tells others not to help them. And when they do help them, he puts them out of the church. Wow. That's some nasty stuff right there. About Mr. Diotrephes, who loves to be a leader. Okay. A leader is a very humble position. It shouldn't be something you boast about. Okay. And a great leader is one who does things, who practices what they lead and not directs. Okay. Okay. And not only does he refuse to welcome the traveling teachers, he also tells others not to help them. And when they do, he puts them out of the church. Wow. That's really gone to that guy's head, huh? Dear friend, don't let this bad example influence you. Follow only what is good. Remember that those who do good prove that they are God's children, and those who do evil prove that they do not know God. I'll highlight that too. We'll make that orange. Everyone speaks highly of Demetrius, as does the truth itself. We ourselves can say the same for him, and we speak the truth. Conclusion. I have much more to say to you, but I don't want to write it with pen and ink, for I hope to see you soon, and then we will talk face to face. Peace be with you. Your dear friends here send you their greetings. Please give my personal greetings to each of our friends there. And that is 2nd and 3rd John. Very short, to the point. Today it would be considered a memo. But yeah, sure, not a lot to highlight here. Okay. I wrote to the church about this, but he had written to the church about taking care of the traveling ministers and traveling, and we do that today. I mean, missionaries. And he wrote to the church about that, but Diotrephes, who is the leader of that church, who loves to be the leader, that right there is a very derogatory statement. Okay, loves to be the leader. Okay, I'll make that much. Diotrephes, who loves to be the leader, refuses to have anything to do with us. Okay. When I come, I report some of the things he is doing and the evil accusations he is making against us. Now, the fact that this guy refuses to have anything to do with the original apostles who were with Jesus, okay, that's a bad thing. Okay, that's just... When I come, I will report some of the things he is doing and the evil accusations he is making against us. And I highlighted, not only does he refuse to welcome the traveling teachers or missionaries, he also tells others not to help them. And when they do help, he puts them out of the church. Wow. Well, dear friend, don't let this bad example influence you. Follow only what is good. And I highlighted this. Remember that those who do good prove that they are God's children, and those who do evil prove that they do not know God. There you go. Peace be with you. This is one of his final letters before he died. And that's 2nd and 3rd John. Very short letters, but very important. It's very important to know what, that, follow the apostles, of course. I mean, apostles all said, do what I do. I do what Jesus did. And the fact that somebody wants nothing to do with the apostles, I mean, that should have been a trigger right there. But it all worked out. We know he never did get to go back and see them. If he wrote that from Patmos, he never did leave Patmos. But that's 2nd and 3rd John. We'll probably get into the Gospels next, the ones we haven't covered yet, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I'm thinking about doing those kind of at the same time on a chapter-by-chapter basis. And we'll talk a lot about the differences and how eyewitness accounts are supposed to be different. They're not supposed to be directly in line, or they're not true eyewitness accounts. But we'll get into that next time. Until then, keep studying, keep reading, pray in the Spirit, ask Him for help, and He'll help you. See you next time.